The quality of the paintwork is at a fairly high level. Despite this, various scratches and chips on the body of the car of the first years of production will still be present, since this crossover has good off-road makings and it probably got out of paved roads, but their complete absence should alert. The quality of body iron as a rule does not raise questions. It has good corrosion protection, galvanized, and for a long time resists the onslaught of the red disease even in open areas of metal, chips. However, the body still has a couple of vulnerabilities. Over time, dirt and chemicals stuck in cavities between the subframe and body, under the exhaust heat shield, above the fuel tank, and in other aerodynamics panels can cause corrosion. There are other poorly protected places that, due to the accumulation of dirt, can gradually become rusty, but in fairness it should be said that even the cars of the first years of production do not have any serious problems. It is also worth monitoring the cleanliness of the drain under the windshield, since here, due to the accumulation of silts, the seam sealant suffers, which protects the interior and electronics components from moisture. The unreliability of fittings can also be attributed to the weak points of the body. So, for example, the owners of the Volvo XC60 call the hidden elements for exterior mirrors consumables. There are also complaints about the reliability of the drives for lifting the fifth door. Even in cars with low mileage, they can not only make extraneous sounds, but also which requires lubrication. The very same door over time begins to tap when driving on rough roads. The disease is eliminated by adjusting the hinges and replacing the seals. Door locks can also knock. Another nuisance is the roof leaking at the antenna installation site. The windshield wiper trapezoid also requires attention. If it is not periodically lubricated, over time it will begin to turn sour. Also, incorrect operation of the trapezoid can be caused by a failure of the position sensor. There are frequent cases of failure in the rear wiper. The windshield and the protective plastic of the front optics received a lot of criticism. They are quickly overridden. Most of the copies are equipped with xenon light headlights, the lamps of which last about 100,000 km, and their replacement is quite expensive. Door handles suffer not only from frequent failures of the electronic keyless entry module, they can also break when trying to open a frozen door. Many owners note such a drawback as a mismatch between the hole in the front bumper and the hole for attaching the towing eye. Power units. In the domestic market, the Volvo XC60 is presented with a wide range of power units, which includes gasoline 4-cylinder 2.0T 203 horsepower and T5 240-249 horsepower, 6-cylinder 3.0 T6 185-306 horsepower, 3.2 243 horsepower, and diesel 5-cylinder 2.0 D3 136-150 horsepower, 2.4 D4 163-190 horsepower, D173 IS, and D5 185-220 horsepower. Operating experience has shown that diesel engines are superior to gasoline engines not only in their reliability, but also in efficiency. Gasoline units, depending on power, consumes from 10 liters to 20 liters per 100, which in general is not surprising. A common problem for all motors is the unreliability of the overrunning clutch of the generator, which for many gets stuck closer to 150,000 kilometers. There are also complaints about the reliability of the valve fan of the cooling system. After 5-6 years of operation, backlash appears, the noise increases, and it can wedge at startup. It is also worth monitoring the condition of the radiators. When used in a metropolis, over time, after 3-5 winters, they may begin to leak. Often there is a malfunction in the cooling fan control unit. Due to incorrect data, the fan starts to work incorrectly, and this leads to the engine constantly running at elevated temperatures. Also, the lack of the regular oil dipstick can be attributed to the disadvantages. An electronic level sensor is used here. With untimely maintenance, there is a high probability of power with the lubrication system. In cases of severe contamination, the pump and oil separator quickly surrender. The average resource of motors is 350–450,000 kilometers. Petrol. Volvo XC60 petrol engines have chronic problems with the timing chain. It often stretches on a run of 100–150,000 kilometers. It is quite difficult to identify during operation in what condition the circuit is and whether it has changed. Therefore, after buying this car in a used condition, it is better to immediately replace the timing kit. This procedure is at least expensive, but in the future it will avoid serious problems. It is also worth paying attention to the condition of the turbine. It painfully endures a rough operation. Installing a turbo timer can help protect the turbocharger from early failure. When using low-quality fuel, a large amount of soot accumulates on the valves by 100,000 km. The problem is solved by cleaning or replacing the valves. Another problematic place is the fuel pump in the tank, in the event of a malfunction of which engine malfunctions and difficulties in starting the unit appear. The main problem of diesel engines as a rule are caused by the use of low-quality fuel or untimely maintenance. So, for example, if you often pour badiashny diesel fuel into the tank, expensive injectors, high-pressure fuel pump and EGR valve will quickly give up, the intake manifold becomes dirty. It is worth noting that if the nozzle starts to flow, the likelihood of cracks on the pistons increases significantly. The same trouble comprehends the unit and when overblowing. Another point that is important to pay attention to is the state of the turbine. You can check it in several ways. The engine should not smoke, there should be no extraneous noise at high speeds, acceleration dynamics. The motors of the first years have one turbine, the weak point of which is the electric drive and the block of vortex dampers. On later versions, two mechanical superchargers with a resource of about 250,000 km are installed and there are no swirl flaps. No particulate filter can also be attributed to problem areas, which clogs up quite quickly under our operating conditions, and its replacement or dismantling is not cheap. A clogged filter manifests itself as difficult starting, unstable idling, deterioration in acceleration dynamics. When using a low-viscosity SAE20 oil, the wear of the liners is accelerated, and by 150,000 km, scoring on the crankshaft may appear. Another typical nuisance is the unreliability of the rockers in the timing drive. They serve as a fuse when the belt breaks. The Volvo XC60 engines were paired with one of four available gearboxes: a 6-speed M66 manual, an ACT F80S C6-speed automatic, a Geartronic 6D CT450 pre-selective, and an 8-speed TG-81SC automatic transmission. Gearboxes are generally hassle-free but require special handling, especially automatic ones. Most often, problems with automatic transmission are caused by a weak cooling system, which under increased loads does not always cope with its duties, overheats. With untimely maintenance and harsh operation, failures in the operation of the gearbox may appear on the first 100,000 mileage. Jerks and slips appear during switches, caused by severe contamination of the valve body or damage to the solenoids. The main trouble of this type of boxes is the wear of the valve body plate. It is destroyed if it is heavily contaminated, and the lack of original repair kits. Closer to 200,000 km, pump bushings and direct drum clutches may need to be replaced. The declared resource is 350,000 km. The Geartronic box is by and large reliable, and if any problems could arise, then as a rule they appeared at the very beginning of operation. If this does not happen during the break-in period, then most likely they will not be in the future. Of the possible gearbox malfunctions, the two most common ones can be noted: incorrect firmware operation, solved by installation new software, and failure of the valve body. Another cost item can be a clutch kit, which with frequent trips and traffic jams will be asked for a replacement after 40–60,000 km. The most reliable is a mechanical transmission, but as in automatic transmissions, you should not think that it does not need maintenance and neglect the quality of the oil. It is also worth regularly monitoring the level of the working fluid in the box. Of the weak points, a dual mass flywheel can be distinguished, which painfully endures prolonged movement at low revs. On cars manufactured after 2013, regardless of the type of transmission, bushing seals begin to flow at the junction of the transmission and the angular gearbox over time. Not infrequently, to eliminate it, it is necessary to change not only the stuffing box, but also the sleeve. Where appears in the working surface of the stuffing box, the splines wear out. All-wheel drive. On the pre-styling Volvo XC60 until 2013, the 4th generation Handlix clutch was installed after the 5th generation with a new software. The key to trouble-free operation of the clutch is careful operation. Frequent slippage and overheating must be avoided, timely maintenance, fluid change, flushing, cleaning, otherwise the unit's life will be significantly reduced. The first signal of problems with the clutch will be the appearance of jerks when starting. Most often, the culprits for the incorrect operation of the system are severe contamination of the pump. After 40–50,000 km, the working channels become clogged, and software failures. The resource of CV joints, drive shaft, and rear gearbox averages 200–250,000 km. On pre-styling cars, it can start to boost quite early. But the intermediate supports of the drive shaft may be asked for a replacement a little earlier. If you actively storm the forts, there may be problems with the electronic parts of the clutch. The suspension of the Swedish crossover, although independent, is difficult to call comfortable. McPherson strut in front, multi-link in the back. Depending on the sales market, the chassis settings will have significant differences. So, for example, on cars officially imported to the CIS, the suspension is less rigid than that of European versions of the car, but at the same time, handling will be worse, stronger rolls in concern. In expensive trim levels, an active suspension is used, which has an increased level of comfort, which will have to be paid very dearly during repairs. As for the reliability of the Volvo XC60 suspension elements, contrary to the panically rumors circulating on the net, it is quite strong and reliable. Of the weak points here, wheel bearings can be noted, the resource of which largely depends on the driving style. It is also worth noting the short service life of the silent blocks of the rear suspension arms for cars operated in megacities. The lamination appears due to the ingress of salt and reagents. As a result, the rear axle starts to walk a little. As with other cars, you should not count on the long service life of the stabilizers, truss and bushings, 40–60,000 kilometers. The rest of the details, on average, are nurse 120–150,000 kilometers, and need drivers have about 200,000 kilometers. The steering system uses a rack and pinion mechanism with electric power steering. For many, this node begins to bother with breakdowns quite early, up to 100,000 kilometers. With the plastic bushings and the rail break, the amplifier electric pump fails. More frequent replacement of the EUR working fluid will help extend the life of the rail and pump. It will not be superfluous to periodically replace the filter tank, suitable for Land Rover, and it costs less. But the braking system, despite the presence of additional electronic systems, is reliable but can bother with squeaks during operation. If at each MOT you do not lubricate the caliper guides, over time they will begin to turn sour and wedges. Among other troubles, it is worth highlighting the rather rapid wear of the brake pads. The security system presses them against the discs in rainy weather to dry them, and malfunctions of the handbrake. Salon and Electronics Volvo XC60. The interior design of the Volvo CX60 is difficult to confuse with any other, as it is made of the corporate style for the Scandinavia brand with its inherent ergonomics. But the main advantages of the interior of the car is a solid assembly and high-quality finishing materials. Among the shortcomings, it is worth noting the not the best quality of the plastic and the center console, it scratches easily, and the presence of squeaks. There are also complaints about the reliability of the buttons, they are rather flimsy and require delicate handling. But the interior electronics cannot boast of standard reliability. Most often, owners are bothered by minor failures of onboard systems, such as keyless entry, rear-view camera, temperature sensor, security systems, etc. Unreliable also include central locking and mirror adjustment wiring. On pre-styling cars, there were problems with seat belt pretensioners, they did not work at the right time. After 3–5 winters, the air conditioning compressor may start to make noise. As a rule, to eliminate the trouble, it is necessary to change the pressure pipe of the system, sometimes cleaning and vacuuming helps. It is also worth mentioning the motor of the climate system. Over time, at medium speeds, it starts to squeak. Replacing or repairing a motor is not an easy task, since for this you will have to disassemble the dashboard. Despite a considerable list of positive malfunctions, the Volvo XC60 can be safely attributed to those cars that do not often bother their owners with breakdowns, but like any other cars, it has its drawbacks. The idea that we wanted to convey in our article is that this machine is technically complex and requires special attention. Having decided to purchase a Volvo XC60, you must be prepared for the high cost of maintenance, especially in the case of diesel modifications. In the secondary market, the choice of XC60 is great, but not all of the presented cars are in good technical condition. Therefore, in order to find a decent copy, it makes sense to check it in a specialized service. If you are the owner of this car model, please describe the problems that you had to face during the operation of the car. Perhaps it is your review that will help readers of our site when choosing a car.